Welcome into the show, everybody. My name is Mark Farzy. This is the Farzy Show, presented by Steven Singer of Steven Singer Jewelers. Great to have you along for the ride, where we're going to be talking your Philadelphia Phillies, taking 2 and 3 from the Baltimore Orioles. We're going to be talking about the first day of training camp. We're going to talk about what we heard from Nick Sirianni, from Howie Roseman, what we heard from the core four, as Fletcher Cox, Lane Johnson, Jason Kelce, and Brandon Graham all addressed the media yesterday, and that Jalen Hurts fella as well. So core five, I don't know what you call it, but Lane Johnson had one of the most beautiful things to say about Philadelphia. And the Eagles have released this new, new episode of, I forget even what they're calling it, but unscripted, I believe, of Jason Kelce addressing the team before the Super Bowl. Oh, baby. Who's chopping onions, ladies and gentlemen? Because Jason Kelce, I don't know if kids still say this nowadays, but he got me in my feels. All right. He certainly got me as a fellow emotional man. And if you're an emotional person and you see somebody else talking about something that they love, something else they're very passionate about, and they start to get a little choked up, oh, it's contagious. Oh, and that Rob Thompson fella. Oh boy, that guy. So yesterday we had talked about on this program how do you walk into that clubhouse and tell Alec Boehm or Bryson Stott that they're not going to bat second in the lineup? How do you do that? Well, apparently how you do that is tell Alec Boehm he's batting cleanup. That's how you smooth out that. But he did do what we talked about yesterday, which was sit Trey Turner. In all honesty, I think he handled it exactly as a player's manager, and he is a player's manager. And look, the Phillies won a World Series with a player's manager and Charlie Manuel. And they went to a World Series with Rob Thompson last year. So I think that is a necessity for this particular clubhouse that has been compiled. But with Trey Turner, he needed yesterday. I think he needs today, because you can't continue to do the same thing over and over again and expect that different result from Trey Turner. So something needed to be shaken up. Now, tomorrow night, Friday night, when they start their 3-game weekend series in Pittsburgh at beautiful PNC Park with the Pirates, they need to make sure, and Rob Thompson and Dave Dombrowski needs to make sure, that Trey Turner is not batting second. I'm fine. Look, if the compromise to move Trey Turner down is to not necessarily have Bryson Stott or Alec Boehm batting second behind Kyle Schwarber, because as I've said, it seems as if Kyle Schwarber is set in stone to be your leadoff hitter, then I think a decent compromise is to still not have Trey Turner. Whatever pretty much doesn't have Trey Turner batting second. But Nick Castellanos, I'm fine with him batting second. Bryce Harper obviously stays as your 3-hole hitter. And then Alec Boehm is your, odd to say that a guy that doesn't really hit for pop is your cleanup hitter, but the guy hits with runners in scoring position. So whatever drives in the runs, baby. And then Bryson Stott batting behind him. That's a nice little promotion. And JT Real Muto, come alive, fella. And how about this? I learned this this morning. JT Real Muto, in 14 career games against the Orioles, has 14 career RBIs. So as someone in Baltimore would say, hey, JT, just go home. Yeah. All right. Anyway, plenty more of that later. So we'll get into that. And Geoff Mosher also is going to join us to talk all things training camp on today's program. We're going to have the same format as we did yesterday. We're going to end the show with the interview, because apparently those Fox 29 people, they just got to talk to me and my man Eitan Chander. I never thought being bald would be so beneficial, but they really like calling the segment we do footballed. Get it? It's because we're bald. Anyway. Let's start it off with the Philadelphia Phillies in yesterday's ballgame. Ranger Suarez, he was actually pretty good yesterday despite the line. 4 runs scored. Gave up that one atrocious home run. I want to say atrocious home run, atrocious for the Phillies fans, but Adley Rutschman just belted that high inside sinker into the left field stands for a 3-run home run. And wouldn't you know it, the Orioles are pretty damn good at scoring runs early, because they do it in a lot of their games and scoring runs first. And they haven't lost 10 games this season where they've done that. I believe they've won 39 of them. So when you go into that hole against the Baltimore Orioles, it's not really good. But the Phillies find a way to bounce right back in the bottom of that third inning with what they were able to do against this Orioles team. They come out in the bottom of that third inning and they immediately get some runs back. They come out at the bottom of that third inning after the Rusby home run. JAKIB comes up there with his first of 2 hits on the night. He gets the double to left field that scores Brandon Mosh. Then Nick Castellanos comes up with an RBI single to make it a 3-2 ball game. JAKIB last night had his best game since being recalled, whether it was one of his 2 hits, whether it was the catch he had to take runs away in that 6th inning, which would have led to a tie ball game. Instead, his catch kept it at a 4-3 game in favor of the Phillies. It was spectacular. He did everything he needed to do to help the ball club last night. And then you go into that 4th inning, and that's where JT Realmuto steps up to the plate, and he gets that 2-run double to left center field. Now it's a 4-3 ball game in the 4th inning. Unfortunately, Hayes steps up to the plate in the 7th, makes it a 4-4 ball game. And then Edmundo Sosa, beautiful at bat in that 7th inning. Edmundo Sosa, who is getting the start in place of Trey Turner, steps up to the plate, goes down to the count 0-2. There's 2 outs in the inning. Goes down to the count 0-2. He hits a long fly ball, opposite field, down the right field line, foul. The very next pitch gets another one that he could take the other way. This one, definitely fair, definitely a home run. He gives the Phillies a 5-4 lead. He reclaims the lead for the Phillies in that 7th inning. Then, still with 2 outs, Bryce Harper steps up to the plate, and I just feel like over the last couple of weeks, it's like late in the game. Has Bryce Harper gotten an RBI yet? No? Oh, I think it's time for Bryce Harper to get an RBI. Boom, he gets an RBI. He helps put the Phillies up 6-4 in that instance, and that would be all she wrote. Some weird things in this game here. Definitely some weird things that need to be talked about. The first weird thing, what's his name? I had it written down, and now I don't. The home plate umpire last night. I want to make sure I say his name and just not say the home plate umpire. Dan Merzel is behind the plate. I always say this because it's a general rule of baseball. If it's a strike in the 1st inning, it better be a strike in the 9th inning, and it better be a strike in the 6th inning. If it's a ball, it's the same principle. Better apply throughout the entire game. You set the strike zone. Even if it's not a strike, the players need to know. And also, if you're going to have a strike zone that is a wide strike zone, as in if it's 3 inches off the plate away from the hitter, then you can't call 3 inches inside on the hitter a strike too, because, and John Kruk put it perfectly last night, it's hard enough to hit baseballs with as wide as the plate is already. Don't make it any wider. And Dan Merzel last night made it a lot wider. Perfect example is that strikeout by Kyle Schwarber, which exactly that scenario played out. Had a strike away from him, called a strike, a pitch called away from him, a strike that was about 3 to 6 inches off the plate. And then he had one that was inside about 3 to 6 inches off the plate, called a strike as well. Kyle Schwarber, when Kyle Schwarber really gets pissed off, you know the umpire's wrong. And I don't know what the umpires are doing here. I know in my 10 years as a referee, me and the other official would talk in basketball. We'd be like, hey, was that a foul? Did you see that angle? Does he palm in the ball or is whatever? We would have conversations like, you know what? I don't think so. And we would kind of help each other through the course of the game. I don't know if professional umpires do that or not. I don't know if they just let the home plate umpire stay in the zone and only convene when it's time to talk about a specific play. But you got to know as that game is going on, if you're Dan Merzel, that this game or this play, or excuse me, those pitches are not strikes. And one of the funniest things was one of the guys behind the behind home plate, one of the fans, and he's there like every game. And I've heard his name before. I've heard what he does before. I can't remember. But he just started yelling out, "You should be a robot." And I thought that is that is beautiful. And I just want people to pause for a second. And PJ, real quick, thumbs up, thumbs down. Thumbs up, you want robo-umps. Thumbs down, no robo-umps. Thumbs down, no robo-umps. That's what I thought. You are a practicing baseball traditionalist. I am a now non-practicing baseball traditionalist. That's what I like to say. How much fun was that? Watching those pitches that weren't strikes be called strikes on both sides of the play. I love human error. Human error is, I don't know anyone that walks around the world and just goes, man, I hope more people make mistakes at the workplace. You know, no. I feel like the last 3 weeks, I feel like since the All-Star break really has been an infomercial for why we should have robo umpires. Look, I don't like the idea of it. I just, yes, you always have umpires, right? That's great. I'm done. Here, if that's going to be the case, then you got to take away the box. You got to take away the strike zone outline for every hitter. You got to take away where each ball is landing or crossing the plate to be a strike or a ball. You got to take away that technology. You got to take it away. It's driving me crazy. That's the only other alternative. And Rob Manfred, I saw this got an extension, under his watch. The games are they're more efficient, doing all these crazy things. They run around second and the extra innings. Oh, my God, I missed 19-inning games. And I kind of do miss 19-inning games. What I don't miss is the fallout afterwards. Like, well, everyone, the bullpens, their arms are dead. We're going to have a memorial service for everybody's arm in the bullpen and that one position player that's now got his arm all racked up. We're going to have a memorial service for his arm as well. So I thought the last night was another perfect example and it was against the Orioles too. Orioles fans, right there for you. We feel you. It's been going on for a while. The other weird thing, what the hell was Craig Kimbrell doing in the 8th inning? And I don't mean like what was he doing in particular. I should rephrase that. Why did Rob Thompson bring in Craig Kimbrell in the 8th inning? That didn't make no sense to me. I don't understand why you would have your closer come in the 8th. I know there's been some runs scored on him as of late, but he also just got the win in the previous night. And I know you could say wins don't matter, but when you're only pitching like an inning, yeah, sometimes they matter. So that didn't make any sense. And then they had Gregory Soto come in and pitch the 9th inning and get the save. And I just thought that was odd. We did see Sir Anthony Dominguez last night. It was good to see him. He pitched very well in his first game, in a month and a half, right? Or 2 months. So it was great to see him back out there. Looked really good. Velocity on his fastball. I originally thought, I think it was the strikeout he got on Rushman. It was a high slider that floated into the strike zone. I think it was at 80, 81 miles per hour. And when I originally watched it, I was like, oh, damn, did he get better with his slider? And then I realized that JT was setting up outside corner of the plate, and it came inside and high to Adley Rutschman. So I maybe he just missed his spot. I don't know, but it just, whatever it was, it looked like a really good pitch, and he got the strikeout, called strike 3 on that particular instance. But good to see him. But I still don't understand. And I know Rob Thompson talked about it after the game. I still don't get it. I still don't understand why you would have Craig Kimbrell in the 8th as opposed to the 9th inning. I know even on the broadcast, Tom McCarthy and John Kruk were wondering the same thing, and they thought, oh, is this going to be a 6-out save? Because, we love those. It was not a 6-out save. It was, he pitched the 8th inning. That was that. Also, more encouraging news. Jose Alvarado continues to get closer and closer to coming back to helping the Phillies win some ball games, which will be great. Phillies got a 3-game series now in Pittsburgh, and then they got a 4-game series in Miami. And after last night's festivities, you take a look at the standings there for the wild card as to where the Phillies are at right now. Phillies still very much in that wild card hunt, as one would assume. As of right now, the San Francisco Giants occupy the top spot, with the Phillies and the Reds occupying the next 2 spots, the final 2 wild card spots, 1, 2, and 3. And then the Marlins are a half game out. The Diamondbacks are a half game out. The Chicago Cubbies are 4.5 games out. You don't want the Cubs to catch fire right now. You don't want the Cubs to catch fire right now. You don't want them having a sniff of that wild card, because you want them to be sellers to help your chances of getting Cody Bellinger. That would be phenomenal. I would love to see Mr. Bellinger here in the Phillies lineup. And I know left-handed bat, whatever. That's fine. If that's what you can get at the All-Star, or if that's what you get at the deadline, you get it at the deadline. Simple as that. And then the Padres are 6.5 games out of contention, so they can forget about it. Mets, 7.5 games. That's where they're at right now. So we have that to bask in and enjoy. Phillies off today. Trey Turner off today. They'll be back at things tomorrow in Pittsburgh to start that 3-game series with the Pirates. Ladies and gentlemen, yesterday was the first day of training camp. Howie Roseman addressed the media. I didn't expect Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni to address the media, yet they did. Coming up in a minute, we're going to talk to our friend over at Inside the Birds, Geoff Mosher. He'll join us. He'll talk all things Eagles and Cam Jurgens getting the start at right guard. He'll talk about what's going on there with the running back room and how they're going to be rotating in and with the number ones. Everyone's going to get their shot at rotating in with the number ones. All that's well and good. All that's lovely. I don't know what they're going to do with the right guard spot other than Cam Jurgens getting the start with the ones today, or yesterday, I should say. Tomorrow, we'll see who's back out there with the ones, but Nick Sirianni did say that, that's what they're going to do right now. They're going to try to figure it out as the process goes on. So we'll all wait with bated breath to see what happens with that right guard spot. One of the things that I saw was pretty constant yesterday, and this is a guy I've been very high on since the Eagles brought him in, Nolan Smith. I think of the two, I think Nolan Smith is going to catch more attention and turn more heads than Jalen Carter. Now, we might say that's easy. You're talking about a guy that's strictly going to be going after the quarterback, a guy that's going to try to get some flashy numbers in the early goings, and the guy that could show off his speed. It's a little bit more difficult. If a defensive tackle can turn heads, that means he is throwing bodies around. That means like Jordan Davis last year in the preseason, who was throwing some bodies around. That means that Jalen Carter's going to have to do the same type of thing to show off his strength, his man strength against men, not college kids, men. So I look forward to seeing that from Jalen Carter, but I think personality-wise, the Eagles, and I've said this for a while, have another Brandon Graham on their hands. And I don't think they're going to have to wait 3 years for Brandon Graham to really find his way in the NFL level like they're going to have to wait for Nolan Smith. And I am very excited for it. And one of the common themes throughout social media yesterday, of all the things you could take away from a shorts and shells practice, and I guess end Guardians now with those things on their head, the only thing we could really take away from it was that Nolan Smith looks super fast. Next to NFL talent, not at a combine, not at a pro day, not at a what do you call it, even in a college game. But at the NFL level, just running around at practice in shorts and shells, mind you, he looks super fast. Hassan Reddick and Nolan Smith on the field at the same time. I know we talk about it's impossible to get 70 sacks again. Let's just live in a world for a second where both your first-round picks are making a huge impact in their rookie seasons. Let's talk about Jalen Carter. Let's talk about Fletcher Cox. Let's talk about those guys. Let's talk about even Milton Williams, right? More of a, weird to say this about Milton Williams, more of a veteran-type player at this point. What? 70 sacks? About 75 sacks. About 80 sacks. Let's get nuts. You want to get nuts? Let's get nuts. Because if Sean Desai is going to be even a little bit more aggressive, and I'm not saying necessarily with blitzing in particular, but if he can be a little bit more aggressive, just by, different schemes, running stunts, whatever it might be, if he can do that and just have different ways with getting after the quarterback, then 70 sacks might be the new benchmark for this team. Now, that's the most optimistic way to look at it. But to be real, there's going to be some kind of learning curve. And even if these guys do, bust out of, their rookie seasons with great flair and great numbers, right, and great success, then guess what? At the NFL level, the guys are going to adjust. And then Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith are going to have to adjust back to that to try to raise their game. But it does get you excited. Even though it's shorts and shells, even though it's the first day of training camp, even though they're not even officially playing yet and they're not hitting, obviously, and they're going to have a more relaxed camp than ever, and last year was a more relaxed camp than ever. Even all that being said, you look at this squad and what they could do, it is exciting. If first-round picks are supposed to come in and have immediate impacts, well, you got two of them, and you got two of them from a school that cranks out talent on the defensive end of the football. And that's not to mention Jordan Davis and what he could be bringing to the table in his second year on the defensive line. I don't think the Eagles are going to miss Javon Hargrave. And I think the Eagles are adding to that edge rusher core with Nolan Smith and Hassan Reddick on the other side. And then that's not even to mention Josh Sweat or Brandon Graham. Oh, baby. The Eagles, I think, with their starting three corners, including their nickel corner in Vontae Maddox, and then with this defensive line, they can do some damage, and they won't even have to be that fancy about it. I mean, if you're Sean Desai, you have these weapons at your disposal. Coaches say it all the time, and they say it all the time for a reason. It's true. Do not mess this up. Put these players in a good position to make plays, and they will make plays. Still huge question marks about, the interior, the linebackers there. I love Nakobe Dean. I'm rooting for Nakobe Dean. I just got to see Nakobe Dean play that position, and I think he will have success. But I'm basing that on a year off he had last year, essentially. It's from the linebacker position. Safety position we've talked about all throughout this entire program. It's a problem in terms of it's a battle. That's what I should say. It's a battle. It's not necessarily a problem yet, but it's a battle. And how about Derek Gunn yesterday when he was talking to us? He was talking about how Reed Blankenship's job might not be safe. Terrell Edmonds going to be a starting safety. Eagles might work Sidney Brown in on the other side. Your starting safeties could be Terrell Edmonds and Sidney Brown, not Reed Blankenship locked in stone and Sidney Brown or Terrell Edmonds. That's an interesting take. It's the first time I've heard that this offseason. Very interesting and not a far cry. Some people might say hot take. Not a hot take. Not a hot take even a little bit. And then I want to get into what was said yesterday by these guys because it is beautiful what was said yesterday. A couple of different things. Let's start with Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts, I think I'm gonna buy a gong and make it like a Confucius type of bit of all the little nuggets that Jalen Hurts drops. And I know the one that went viral yesterday was that he turned down Netflix. I thought that was odd because he said he turned down Netflix last year and said it wasn't appropriate. And then he turned him down again this year. I would think this year's appropriate. Now, maybe he just doesn't want that attention, but I just thought it was interesting the way he said it. So, yeah, he turned down Netflix for their quarterback series. I said I was going to watch it. I haven't watched it yet. I am going to watch it. I'm excited. I am excited to watch. It's just a matter of finding the time to be able to sit down and just watch. But I'm interested in the show, and I want to see what Jalen Hurts turned down. So we'll talk about that later. But I know that's one of the things that went viral yesterday, and apparently people are raving about this series. But something else that Jalen Hurts got into yesterday was anything in the past doesn't matter. Okay, raising the standard is what matters. Last year, apparently, the standard this year it should be, at least making about back to a Super Bowl. So raising the standard would be winning the Super Bowl. He said he also had a good reset of last year. He said his priorities, and he said if you fail, and where's my gong? The book of Jalen, the book of Hurts. If you fail, you want to fail forward. I don't know if you could call last year a failure if you go by Giannis's definition, Giannis Antetokounmpo's definition. But if you fail forward. Failing in the Super Bowl means you're still in the Super Bowl. In the words of the great John Lennon, that wasn't John Lennon. I'm sorry. I fought the English accent. I couldn't help it. What did John Lennon say? If you, when you dream, aim for the moon, because if you miss, you still land among the stars. Right? Beautiful thing. Jalen Hurts, very similar mindset. Goals change, but the standards don't. One of the nuggets he dropped in there yesterday. And I got into this, and people got pissed at me last year for saying this, about how usually it's a bad thing when the team doesn't have an identity, like one true identity. What would you say this team's identity is? And it's like, oh, they run the football. Well, they also throw the football. Well, they're a great defense. Oh, they are a chameleon. When you really think about it, the really good football teams, they don't have a one true identity. Their identity is exactly what Jalen Hurts said yesterday. Whatever wins, that's our identity. So it's not one thing that you're trying to pigeonhole this team into. You're not trying to paint them into a corner with one thing they do well. They're trying to do everything well. Talking about, he was asked about being a better passer and maybe running less. And I love this answer. He's not sure about all that, but he just wants to embrace the uniqueness of his game. Very nice. And just wants everyone to raise their standards on their team. So that was him yesterday. He talked about his relationship with Brian Johnson. I like that he didn't get into, like, usually if you're talking about a guy and talking about their offensive coordinator, if he's a new offensive coordinator, or if it's a guy that he's known since he was 4 years old, he did talk about the relationship he has with Brian Johnson, how beneficial that is. So that's great. But he didn't like gush over Brian Johnson. When he was asked about Brian Johnson, about, what do you think of the differences? He goes, well, we haven't really done anything yet. So he didn't just jump to the compliment of like, well, what's he got to say? Well, I'll tell you what he's going to say, an honest answer. And the honest answer was, I can't tell you yet. We didn't really do anything yet. So how am I supposed to evaluate Brian Johnson? He could have just said nice things about a guy he's known since he was 4 years old, but instead he goes, well, let me be real about this. Absolutely love that he said next to nothing about Brian Johnson, believe it or not. So that's what you had from Jalen Hurts yesterday. Jason Kelce, first off, even before I got to his press conference yesterday, the behind-the-scenes stuff where he talked about how important, right before the Super Bowl, the night before the Super Bowl, how important it was. He's like, think about how many players played in the league this year. Think about how many guys worked their ass off just to get to the league. Think about how important a night like this is the night before the biggest night of our lives. He's like, even if you've been in the Super Bowl, being in another one only raises those stakes. And he's like, I'm sorry, I'm going to get emotional while talking about things I care about. And he starts getting emotional. Oh, man. I got teary-eyed. Man. I didn't cry, but I got teary-eyed. But if I did, so what? Anyway, listen to him talk about how much he loves this game, man. There's no question as to why there's no question as to why Jason Kelce would come back and play football again. The man absolutely loves it. To be great, you got to love it. It's got to be what you eat, sleep, and breathe and all that. And him being able to find a balance and seeing his lovely wife, Kylie, write about it as well on social media about how much he loves the game and how, he wants to go after the dream again. It's an incredible thing. The guy really loves this. And he loves being a Philadelphia Eagle, and he loves playing for this city. And you could go back to even a couple of years ago when he was talking about how this team is in the business, the NFL is in the business of hope. Players are in the business of hope and giving people hope. Well, he gave his teammates before that Super Bowl a lot of hope going into it and a lot of perspective as well. And then yesterday, when he was addressing the media, he talked about Jalen Carter immediately making an impact, how the guards were talking about him and Jordan Davis, about how they definitely see the difference between Jordan Davis from last year to this year. So that's a great thing. Jalen Carter, he didn't have to block one-on-one, but other guys had to. He said he doesn't really buy too much into first impressions. Talked about how Brian Johnson is right along the lines of other coordinators that he's had that are just great communicators. And he said that's the most important thing, being able to communicate with your offensive line, your quarterback, your running back, your wide receivers, your tight ends, everybody. Got to be a great communicator with everybody there. And let's face it, Jason Kelce is now a celebrity. And he was asked about that yesterday during his press conference. And he says that's the least thing. He doesn't like that. That's the part he doesn't like. He loves interacting with people. He loves doing the podcast. But if people just walked by him at the store and just went, hey, love the podcast, then he's cool with that. But if people are freaking out over him, then he's like, that's the part I'm comfortable with. Unless he's hosting, happy hour at the OD. Then I guess that's a different animal. Moving on to Lane Johnson, what he had to say yesterday. Just Cam Jurgens is looking good. Developing chemistry with Cam is just something that's going to come in time. Feels awesome since the surgery. I never heard someone say I had surgery on both groins. But Lane Johnson said that, and I just went, ooh, ow. But he's back, and he's feeling good. Here's something that absolutely blew my mind with Lane Johnson. And I don't know, maybe I don't know how this settles with you guys. Lane Johnson said yesterday, as he continued to fight through the injury and continue to play, he said it got easier. I don't know if that should blow my mind as much. Oh, yeah, you sure you learn your better pain tolerance. I guess, man. But Lane has had a knack for doing that, whether it's high ankle sprains that he's had in the past and he's fought through them, or it's the abductor injury that he had last year. He just kept fighting through. And he said on top of it, he owed it to his teammates and he owed it to the city to keep playing. If that's not a guy you want to say, quote unquote, foxhole guy, then I don't know what you're after. But that was pretty incredible. Something else he got into, how the city demands the best version of each player. And when you start talking about history and what came before you, he started talking yesterday about Trey Thomas, our man Trey. He started talking about John Runyon. and how those guys playing their careers the way they played their careers and playing, here in Philadelphia for as long as they did. He's like, that's the standard. That's the only acceptable way to play this game, is to play up to that standard. That's an incredible thing. So there's something very different about the city of Philadelphia, about how you walk around here and you feel this city when you walk through it and how much people care about what you're doing. And he just talked about how everyone is going to be giving them their best shot this year. I referenced this before when it came to one of my favorite Hard Knocks moments was Rex Ryan doing the Hard Knocks with the Jets. And I want to say 09, maybe 08. And it was after I think they played in their first AFC championship game and they went to another. And he was addressing the team in his first team address of the season, of the training camp. And he said, last year we snuck up on a lot of guys. That doesn't mean anything. You know what it means now? It means everyone knows that we're good, and they're going to give us their best, because we were one of the best teams in the NFL last year. So everyone's going to be bringing their best. And that's exactly what Lane Johnson said yesterday. He goes, this isn't a time to sneak up on people. Everyone knows that we're a Super Bowl contending team. We're going to get everybody's best shot this year. You better be ready for it. And he did say that Nolan Smith reminds him a hell of a lot of Brandon Graham. Same type of energy, never had a bad day, all that stuff. Fletcher Cox also addressed the media yesterday. Just talked about the growth in Jordan Davis, how you definitely see that growth. You can feel his presence this year a lot more so than last year when he was just a rookie. Jalen Carter getting in, learning as a pro, acting like a pro, letting go of distractions is something important. Fletcher Cox says, as a former first-round pick myself, that's something I could definitely identify with when it comes to the expectations. You can only set the expectations for yourself, ignore everything else. Also in free agency, about how he made the right decision. And you know what? I just said it a second ago with Lane Johnson talking about Trey Thomas and talking about John Runyon and kind of the precedent that was set here in Philadelphia with offensive linemen. One of the things Fletcher Cox talked about was when he was drafted, they were 4-12. Cullen Jenkins, if you remember, was the defensive tackle that came over from Green Bay in free agency. And Cullen Jenkins kind of, treated him like his bear cub. It was like, hey, fella, this is how we do it in the pros, man. This is how we practice. This is how we learn. This is how we execute. This is how we do everything. And he said he's trying to do that right now for not only Jordan Davis, but, of course, Jalen Carter as well. So I come to the conclusion yesterday, after sort of meeting the 2023 Philadelphia Eagles, and that's what training camp is the first day, especially when you hear from guys, the leaders on the team in their first press conferences of the season. Or I should say maybe the new football year, I guess, with training camp starting. I love this team. Whether it's the leaders, whether it's the young guys that I have faith in, whether it's the quarterback, talking about raising the standards, failing forward. I love this team. Even listening to Nick Sirianni. Nick Sirianni said something that, some people might take out of context, but in case you hear it later today, at some point, Nick Sirianni said, it might sound weird to a lot of people. Our goal is not, right now, our goal is not to win the Super Bowl. Right now, our goal is to get better every day. That's what training camp is. And I thought, that's fair. That's fair. I mean, yeah, you'd never want to hear from your head coach's mouth. Our goal is not really win the Super Bowl right now. But again, there's the right now thing again. And Doug Peterson did that all the time, the right now thing. Right now, Sam Bradford's our starting quarterback. But listen to Nick Sirianni talk about it yesterday. He's exactly right. It's just continue to improve, continue to get better each and every day. And hopefully, before we know it, we're going to see the pads on these guys, at least just to get a better visual of what they'll look like with those pads on, and the speed of the game with those pads on, some joint practices, really seeing guys compete for positions with guys that are competing for positions on other teams where there's a little bit more of an edge to it. I look forward to that. That's where I'll start paying more attention to what Nolan Smith is doing, running around the corner or whatever it might be. That's when I'll start paying more attention to Jalen Carter on the interior. That's what I'll shift away from what guys are saying and depth chart to really start talking about skill. And as I said many times before with Jalen Carter, as I said many times before with Nolan Smith, I don't think we're going to have to wait very long for him to get his double-digit sack season, his first double-digit sack season. So I look forward to all that. Let me tell you about Steven Singer of Steven Singer Jewelers, the other corner of 8th and Walnut, right there on Jewelers Row. For over 40 years, Steven's been in the love business in Philadelphia, helping people get engaged and fall in love. So trust the man with the perfect price each and every day online at I8StevenSinger.com. That's I8StevenSinger.com. How about the amazing people at Manscaped? Manscaped.com, the leader in below-the-waist grooming. Join 4 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with their confidence and comfort with their skin-safe technology. So check out Manscaped at manscaped.com. Ladies and gentlemen, how about the amazing people at Freestone Farm CBD? Freestone Farm CBD, love the tropical tasting Bayox, clocks in at a chart topping 24.1%, and Super CBD, which is half Hindu, Kush, and 21%. So next to these guys are off the charts. Let's try Freestone Farm CBD, freestonefarmcbd.com. How about PHL Sports Station, Philadelphia Sports Station, enhancing Philadelphia Sports Station across all social media and blogs. I'll be on phlsportstation.com. Let's get to the chat check, and then we're going to get to Mosh. Sean Gillespie, good morning. April, good morning. Farzy, emotional. Amazing. I am emotional. I'm an emotional man. I come from a passionate people. Okay. Sean Kilray, what's going on? I'm running through a wall for them when Kelsey and even Dawkins pep talks speeches, you know? Absolutely. Ooh, Sean Kilray answered the quiz. Oh, yeah, I did look into it, by the way. I was wrong. Yesterday quiz, you know, Carson Caveman with a hell of a catch. Carson Caveman? That's funny. Sean Gillespie, you need consistency in strikes. Bring on the robots and the rise of our machine overlords. April, I read somewhere that there have been over 1,300 wrong calls at the plate so far this season. That is nuts. That is nuts. Fuji, good morning, Fuji. Training camp here, 5 days MLB deadline. Lucas Giolito to the Halos. Oh, did that go down last night? So there was one trade last night involving Noah Syndergaard. Sean Gillespie, smart move, Jalen. Plenty of time for Netflix specials after your career. Sean Gillespie, that's interesting to say that. One of the things that did jump out to me, I don't think I marked it down. Oh, yeah. At the end of the press conference, Jalen Hurts said there'll be plenty of time for conversation like that. At the right time, there'll be plenty of time for conversations like that. At the right time. Jake in the outfield, caveman. Eagles don't need an identity. Mihai, I don't disagree. April, Kelsey is amazing. Such a great example of a player. Oh, John Jay. Wow. Sean Kilrain, good hustle on you is the answer to that question. Jake J? Why does John J sound right to me? Jake J. Okay, I'll go with you on that. Thanks, everybody in the chat. You guys are great as per usual. As of right now, our good friend Geoff Mosher joins us on the Rothman Orthopedics guest line. I'll be back with you guys tomorrow morning to talk all things Eagles, talk all things, well, really the entire Philadelphia sports scene as per usual. Have a great rest of your day, everybody. Here's our good friend Geoff Mosher of Inside the Birds. Right now, our good friend from Inside the Birds Empire, Eagles writer Geoff Mosher joins us. What's up, Mosh?
What's up, man? How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, my friend. It's great to have you. Make sure everyone's following Geoff on Twitter, all social media platforms, as well as checking out InsideTheBirds.com, as well as the podcast with our friend Adam Kaplan, breaking down all things Eagles. Nobody's covering the Eagles like you guys are covering the Eagles. First day, training camp, in the books, first little run around. Now I think they get like a month off or something. But no, first day in the books. We learned that, yes, Cam Jurgens is going to get the initial shot at the right guard spot. He'll be running with the ones, was running with the ones, as Nick Sirianni talked about today, and you guys wrote about on InsideTheBirds.com. Right decision, wrong decision, or just right decision for now?
Oh, I mean, yeah, right decision for now. Look, I think Tyler Steen, who they drafted in the third round, maybe if he can adjust to playing the inside, might be more ideal for the job. He's a bigger body. You already have an undersized center. Isaac Seumalo wasn't the biggest guy either, but he was country strong. He was almost stronger than his size. And so Tyler Steen is a guy who if he can make that transition, and they'll see, is going to be a good competitor for this job. But Cam Jurgens, while he is lighter and probably more built for center, he is in year two. He did cross-train a little at right guard last year before he had to move over to center when Jason Kelsey had the elbow procedure. And he is a second-round pick. So there's good reasons to get him the first look as well. And I'm going to add this to the mix. We joked about the schedule. Do they ever practice, right? I don't know how much Jason Kelce's going to practice in camp, right? I mean, they're already scaling back. So I can't imagine Jason Kelce's going to be full go every single day, right? So there's probably going to be a lot of times this camp where Cam Jurgens has to play first team center. So if he's really getting looked at guard, you got to get him as many opportunities early to get those right guard reps in before he does eventually make that move to center when necessary. That was the plan last year too, but then Jason Kelce had the procedure and he went right to center. So basically I think you got to start off right now and have it done.
Mm-hmm. All right. So let's talk about the guys that are going to be running the football behind that offensive line. Let's talk about DeAndre Swift. Let's talk about Kenny Gainwell. Let's talk about Rashad Penny and those guys. Nick Sirianni said during his opening remarks that you're going to have a running back by committee. Essentially, everyone's going to be getting reps with the ones. In essence, how do you think all this shakes out? Is there going to be a bell cow guy per se, or are we going to have a specialists coming out of the backfield?
Well, I think there's going to be defined roles for these guys, Mark, and I'm positive the coaches just don't know what those roles are yet. They've got to figure them out, right? I mean, first of all, these guys have to stay healthy. Rashad Penny has not been healthy for a long time. DeAndre Swift, same thing. He's not as injury prone as Rashad Penny, but there are certainly injury concerns with DeAndre Swift throughout his career. And then you've got Kenny Gainwell, who's about to have like I think an increased role here, and they're going to find out, can he handle more volume? Trey Sermon, listen, I'm telling you, I know nobody's talking about Trey Sermon, and for good reason right now with all the additions that they made. But there's a reason last year that even though he only carried the ball twice, that he maintained his roster spot while they were doing all that carousel stuff at the end of the year with injuries. I was told the coaches really liked Trey Sermon. They thought he was acclimating well. There just wasn't opportunities to get him on the field for obvious reasons. So you can't just count him out, even with the additions that they've made. So, and then there's Boston Scott, right? So we know roles for what these guys can do. We know they have some pass catchers with DeAndre Swift and Kenny Gainwell. But
is that Boston Scott in the room with you right now? Is he saying, talk more about me? Talk more about me.
I'm the last guy on the totem pole. That's my dog. He's a big Boston Scott fan, I guess. But I just think that's what this camp – it's very rare that you have camp these days and you have like real job competitions. Well, we just talked about the one at right guard. That's real. I think running back is a real competition / fact-finding mission for the coaches to see what they've got.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Now, the other thing we can talk about here is your most impactful players going from last year to this year and biggest additions as well. I know he's a rookie, and I know they're rookies, but you're talking about a guy in Nolan Smith coming off the edge. You're talking about a guy like Jalen Carter in the middle. What are realistic expectations for this brand of Georgia, Bulldog NFL kids coming into the league here?
Yeah. I think Jalen Carter, as long as he comes as advertised, will wind up being in that starting interior and a 5-man front. You'll have theoretically, and the Eagles hope, Jordan Davis in the middle, flanked by Fletcher Cox on one side and Jalen Carter on the other. Obviously, it was Milton Williams on day one because he's been here longer. You're going to get some opportunities to see him. Jalen Carter, they always make rookies kind of earn their stripes. Same thing with Nolan Smith. But whereas Nolan Smith, I think, they're going to have to figure out how and when to use him the best way, not just based on his performance, but also like it's hard to have Nolan Smith and Hassan Reddick on the field at the same time because you're pretty light around the edges. I mean, that's certainly not a first or second down type package that you're looking at. So there's a little bit more of a wait and see with Nolan Smith, but Jalen Carter just has to do what a defensive tackle is supposed to do for him to be able to play a lot of snaps. Now he'll face a little bit of the same issues that Jordan Davis did coming out of Georgia, which is that these guys never play the full games. They're in such a good deep rotation down there that they have to learn what it's like to be on the field 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 snaps in a row at a time. And so that's Jalen Carter. I'm sure that's what training camp is for with Jalen Carter. And I would say that it is a little bit of a slower transition for a defensive tackle into the NFL, as opposed to, say, sometimes wide receivers just come in and hit the ground running, or there are other positions where you can do it. But I think as long as, and we've heard so far that he's been coachable, he's had a good attitude. As long as he's doing what he's supposed to do, he's going to get on the field.
Mm-hmm. When you talk about some of these other position battles that are out there right now, linebacker, I'm seeing people write about linebacker. I think you guys had Andrew DeCecco there as well on the first day of camp, looking at things there. Linebacker seems to be a big thing here. I keep hearing this name. My audience might already be sick of hearing it. Von Sumeren coming in here and potentially making a roster spot, making the practice squad as a linebacker. The Eagles have certainly gone in the undrafted direction before. What are you making of a guy like that?
Yeah, well, first of all, tell me that Ben Van Sumeren doesn't sound like an 80s WWF wrestler, like the old guys who would just come in and get their asses kicked, right, just to against the bigger name guy. You know,
I'm pretty sure he went up against John McClain at Nakatomi Plaza. I'm pretty sure.
Absolutely, he's part of the group. But look, I mean, he's an undrafted free agent. I know he tested well athletically. The book on him that we were told was that, for a linebacker, you want to see a little bit better instincts, sharper instincts. So he's got a big gap to bridge. I mean, Nakobe Dean's one of your linebackers. Nick Morrow, very likely the other, unless Christian Ellis can unseat him. If those guys stay healthy, I think that's your 2 to 3 linebackers that are going to play. Just like last year, really all you saw was T.J. Edwards, Kaiser White, and occasionally in a blowout or something, Nakobe Dean. But this is also a position where Howie Roseman's probably going to look at around camp, cut down day, to see if he can upgrade it going into the year without doing something crazy, like trading for, a big. I know everybody thinks Patrick Queen is on the out with Baltimore because of the moves they made, but I can't see Howie really giving up big draft compensation for a guy who's only got 1 year left and is looking for a contract extension to make a lot of money at a position that they're clearly not going to pay a lot of money at.
Right. I want to ask you about this and go around the league briefly here, just when it comes to these quarterback contracts. Jalen Hurts signs, great deal. Lamar Jackson signs, a little bit more, fine deal for the Ravens and Lamar Jackson. Justin Herbert, now he signs his deal. I'm never against the Eagles setting the market, especially in this regard. But when you look at those 3 quarterbacks right there, it's no disrespect to any of them. But if you're asking, and people are going to talk about who's better, I feel like the Eagles, so far in this new era, this new class of quarterback signings, got the best quarterback for the best price.
Well, yeah, and that's why it's smart to do it earlier than later. And that's why it's smart to look at the Carson Wentz situation and say, we can't allow that to influence our thinking and all of a sudden become more risk averse, right? Because it didn't work out the first time. The prices go up by the day. And when Joe Burrow signs his contract extension, it's going to push that number even bigger. So, if you remember, the Dallas Cowboys waited on Dak Prescott. They waited and waited and waited until after his 4th year. They didn't give it to him after his 3rd year, I think, because he had the injury. And then they had to pay the top market money at that time for a quarterback, and that hurts you. You want to be able to pay your quarterback, but also, once the market resets, you want that to actually look like a good deal for both sides, within 3 months of doing it. And I think it worked. It works out for the Eagles, and it works out for Jalen Hurts.
What is the future of the running back position in the NFL? I know everyone's kicking this around. They're talking about money. They're talking about finances. They're talking about Saquon Barkley. They're talking about Saquon Barkley, Geoff, as if he crossed a picket line to go sign his deal with the Giants and show up on time for camp. What is the future here when it comes to the running back position? Money-wise, anything, just the future position?
I don't know, because it was looking like there was going to be some running back revolt, and the Zoom call happens and the airing of the grievances. And then 2 days later, Saquon Barkley winds up signing for $900,000 more than he originally would have made on the tag. That's not exactly a real heavy negotiation iron fist right there. I mean, you basically, I don't want to say paved, but he didn't have leverage to begin with. I don't know. I think that it's hard to predict the long-term ramifications. You could convince me that players would not want to play running back anymore, because where's the money in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And not only that, but there's not enough money, but there's a whole lot of mileage and body toll. But you'd have a hard time convincing me totally of it, because it's still a glory position. It is still a position that great athletes excel at. And, you have the opportunity now in college to make money through NIL. So it's not like you have to wait till you get to the NFL to make money. And it's not like no running backs ever get paid.
Mm-hmm.
That's a little bit of a fallacy. I mean, Todd Gurley just a few years ago got a huge contract and then hit decline immediately. There are guys who Nick Chubb did get a contract extension, I believe, with Cleveland. That was pretty good, even though he was on that call. And there was, Christian McCaffrey got paid. So it's not like every single running back doesn't get paid, but it is definitely an issue, and it is definitely intentional, me thinking, that a team that, like the Atlanta Falcons this year drafting Bijan Robinson, or the Giants when they drafted Saquon, that they know that until they get their quarterback and passing game developed, they are going to ride the crap out of their running back for 3 to 4 years on a rookie deal, and then figure out a way to not have to pay that guy, because along those years, they're going to wind up drafting that quarterback, that offensive tackle, that defensive, just like what the Giants have done, right? And they're going to start to gear everything more toward the passing game to the point where they're not going to pay the running back. So there is an element of unfairness for running backs compared to other spots where they are used and abused and then not valued. You could say that about quarterback like Jalen Hurts, who had to play on a rookie deal and be an MVP caliber player, but at least he knows he's going to get paid like he did. The running backs, they don't always know that, and that is probably very unique to their position compared to the other positions in the NFL.
I know I see a lot of people, with the comparison. I don't know if it was NFL Today or whatever it was, or NFL Live rather. I'm still coming off basketball season, NBA today. NFL Live, they put out the stat with, Miles Sanders getting $7.2 million with the Panthers, and the entire stable of Eagles running backs is now about $7.2 million for the upcoming season. It's ridiculous.
Boston Scott is the highest paid Eagles running back. Think about that.
I know it sounds crazy, but I feel like there's going to be a subdivision of the players union. It's just called running backs. And it's just going to be like, all right, well, we're here too, but hopefully we get paid at some point. Yeah. All right. Why, Geoff Mosher, why should I be confident in Sean Desai as the Eagles defensive coordinator?
Why should you be? Well, I feel like you know how we do it inside. I feel like I could give you 5 reasons why you shouldn't.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
why you should not. So
it's like being a comedian. You can argue any side of an argument. It's whichever funnier. Yeah.
There you go. So 5, a couple reasons you should be is because he's done it before, right? So he's been a play caller, as opposed to them trying to fill that position with someone who had not done the job. I think that's a good thing. I will give you another good reason you should be. Most coaches are products of their environment, of who influenced them. When Andy Reid came here, he was bringing basically what he learned from Mike Holmgren and what Mike Holmgren learned from Bill Walsh, and Andy Reid also learning from Bill Walsh. So look at Sean Desai, who he's worked with. I mean, he's worked with Vic Fangio, John Fox, Mel Tucker, Chuck Pagano. So he's been surrounded. Oh, and then in Seattle, he's with Pete Carroll, right? So he's been kind of surrounded and groomed by a lot of really good defensive minds and people who believe in different defensive concepts, but at the end of the day have always put out good defenses. So those are 2 good reasons I think that you would. And the third I would say is that he's not coming in here and completely changing the front or the scheme the way Jonathan Gannon was from Jim Schwartz, right? You went from a 4-3 wide 9 to a Fangio concept with Jonathan Gannon, and all of a sudden we're talking about certain types of players with the Eagles that we'd never talked about before, like a nose tackle like Jordan Davis, right? Or a man match system that they've never played on the back end. Sean Desai was heavily influenced by Vic Fangio in Chicago, and he's going to run some variation of that Fangio concept that a lot of the players who were here last year, Bradbury, Maddox, Slay, some of the linebackers, or N'Kobe Dean, they're familiar with that. So while there are 5 to 6 new starters on defense, and that would gravitate toward why you shouldn't be confident, at least that there's some familiarity in place there.
Last thing for you, Geoff Mosher. When it comes to Jalen Hurts, it's really hard to top what he did last year, other than, of course, win the Super Bowl or maybe win the MVP. But if he's really being, honest with himself, if he's really trying to nitpick at himself and understand what he could do better specifically, is there anything that stuck out to you from last year to this year? You say, okay, this one particular thing, if I'm Jalen Hurts, this is what I worked on for all offseason. Like last year, we talked about reading a defense. We talked about the deep ball, and it looks like he certainly improved upon that. Mm-hmm. Is there anything you want to see in particular for Jalen Hurts, or anything you'll be looking for that he's improved upon from last year to this year?
Yeah, well, I think that, I don't want to say someone has to throw to their running backs or someone has to start checking down, because if you don't need to, you don't need to. But I would think that the way the Eagles were so prolific last year, that they're going to see some different design concepts defensively that are going to try to take away that deep ball, on the back end. And, certain quarterbacks started to reach new levels when they would see it before it happened. And, I don't want to use Tom Brady as an example, but one of the things he did really well was like he knew that based on certain defensive looks he was getting, that those flats were going to be open, right, for his running backs. And it would just snap, bam, throw to James White, snap, bam, throw to Kevin Falk or whoever they had, Ben Jarvis, Greenells. They had a bunch of different pass catchers. And I think when you've got DeAndre Swift and Kenny Gainwell and guys who can catch the ball better, then there will be opportunities to move the chains underneath where you can hit those guys early in the route and then give them a chance to make yards after. You've seen some of the better quarterbacks develop that way. And I would say that's something that we didn't have to see a whole lot from last year's offense, is that check down, or that intentional, what I call it, intentional check down, because the running back's going to be open down there.
I'm just going to make that the hot route. Forget about it checking down. You're number one. Go for it.
Sure. Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. But, by the way, are you a fantasy player? Do you play fantasy baseball, fantasy football?
I play fantasy football. That's it. That's all. That's the only fantasy I play.
But how often do us as fantasy players and owners, we draft a player coming off an unbelievable year and we get disappointed because like the next year he's still good, but it's like significantly less production, right? That's the challenge for Jalen Hurts, because there's only like a small percentage of players in the league that give you that kind of production every year, year after year. And I'm talking even good play. I mean, there are some really good running backs and good wide receivers who explode and have 1,400, 1,500, and then the next year, it's like 1,100 or 1,200. It's step back because they're everything goes right sometimes, and B, you become more under the gun from your opponent. They're doing everything they can to find out what your weakness is and out scheme you. So it's going to be difficult for him to replicate everything he did last year, but it doesn't mean he can't add and get better. I certainly think he can.
Mm-hmm. No, with you 1,000%. Ladies and gentlemen, his name is Geoff Mosher. Check out all things Geoff Mosher across all social media platforms. And of course, Mark,
do you like the eagle in my picture there? And
what is the eagle killing? What is that?
I probably a fox, maybe a coyote. I wasn't sure. I drove by.
A coyote?
Yeah, I live in South Jersey, Mark. We got all sorts of animals in here.
We in the burbs, man. We got our own wildlife out back here. And make sure you guys check out all things Inside the Birds as well at InsideTheBirds.com. The entire Inside the Birds empire as well. Next, when's the next episode dropping? When's the next podcast dropping?
We're gonna drop a podcast on Thursday morning.
There you go.
Like you said, there's everything on InsideTheBirds.com and our Patreon site's doing well. InsideTheBirds.com, Patreon.com/InsideTheBirds, all that.
Fantastic. Geoff Mosher, always a pleasure, brother. Thanks so much. I'm sure we'll speak to you again down the line.
Yes, sir, my friend. Thank you.
See you, Mosh.